Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today I have the pleasure of checking out a track from an act named Avdrav titled First Sunset, and if we switch over to here we have ourselves a track on Spotify and we're going to listen through this track from start till finish and we're going to hear what we think. This is my first impressions with these guys, so let's go, let's do it. Oh, it's very pretty with the synths off the bat in it. I like how it's on one side of the stereo field, that's cool. Really palatable chord progression here. The envelopes on these synths with the oscillation is fascinating, man. How they come in and out. And just as nice to just have everything cut out for a bit and have the focus on the center field of the stereo, you know. We've had such lovely, warm vocal takes with the way they spread around the stereo field there from the left to right of the cans. And just these really enigmatic, lovable synth tones, man, with the bass popping off like that is, but in a really kind of adorable way, is wonderful, man. Yeah, bring it in. Oh, is this like the Earth and the Sun? The sun rising and coming back down. Is the music supposed to be orbiting your headphones? Because if that's the case, that's awesome, man. It's actually wonderful. I adore it to pieces, actually, genuinely. There's a lot of positive stuff I want to say about this track, but I think I need to try and be succinct about it. And welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track by Avdrav titled First Sunset. Now, what do I think this track is about? Well, I would assume it's about sunsets. I heard parts about, like the light and everything like that, the first light and all that, but then of course, I suppose we're just talking about how does it feel to have experienced that day, that awash, with that all that opportunity, and for then to it to kind of come down and let the sun sort of set on whatever activities or events have transpired. How does it feel to actually exist in the glow of that, and for things to kind of end, for you to be around that rotation, if that makes sense, to exist within it. I'm not trying to get too sort of out there with this. Basically, I'm trying to sort of like describe how the music made me think and feel, because I listened to the lyrics. I didn't get all the lyrics, mind you. I got some of them. Part of that is because how the vocals were done. Like the vocals were kind of trippy sounding with like little delay bits, so they kind of flowed over each other, almost like the sun spilling out into the headphones. But that's basically my take on it. It's basically someone discussing the day with you, the sun setting, like how you've interpreted that experience and how it made you feel. The vocals were great. When we did have the lyrics come through again, I didn't hear all of it clearly, but the parts that I did get sounded caring and genuine and compassionate. The melodies were cool. I liked those. I think the effect of the delay with itself being kind of rotated over itself was kind of like flowing, and it was a more sort of like, I think, a cooler way of doing it than like just having like a reverb delay tail, just having like stuff after the fact. There was like a pre-delay or something like that. The way we sort of communicate with the listener with a head and chest voice was good. The vocal technique was reasonably solid. But it's also just the fact that we had this great situation where we sounded like we really cared about the listener's experience here, and we didn't overstay our welcome within the track. I think that we really communicated, clearly our passion for what we were singing about. And we knew how to create melodies and sort of like vocal concepts that would work well with the rest of the stuff within the mix and the composition. And all in all, I don't really have any complaints about the vocals. I think they were well done. I mean, we had one bit where it was talking about staring at the sun, so I suppose it was just taking it on in all of its glory, I suppose, taking in its existence there. And it was an interesting approach there. There was a relative minimalism to the words that were phrased there and vocalized. It was more about the legato effect of that tune within the overall coloration of the track. But it was cool. It was an interesting approach to it. I haven't really heard a lot of singers do stuff like this before, and I think as more of a kind of an extra, almost instrumental layer to add to the rest of the vibe, it worked well. The track at just under 4 minutes fits within that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot. I think part of what made it work was that it simply wasn't an exercise in redundancy in regards to the minimalism of the composition itself. We had lots arranged there with the different sequences there, the pads, the basses there. When the percussion did come in later on, it was reasonably conservative at first, but then there was a bit of pace to it, a little bit of pep with how kind of almost stabby it was later on with the kicks and snares. We never overstayed our welcome with things, like we had change of the various melodies and harmonies and textures throughout to a point where it almost sounded through composed, and I like that, but they never lost how beautiful or pretty they were. We had a great sense of warmth and kindness coming from the instrument textures, as had the chord shapes, the major tones that we had there. We never went into any sort of like weird intervals or dissonances, the kind of like concept, ideas there melodically or harmonically. And I think if there was a bit more sort of like speed or variation to the rhythm and the percussion, it was simply to offer a range or a difference to what we have with the legato spacings or phrasings of some of the synth layers and all that. I think that in general, we had this great sort of like overall kind of like atmosphere that was predominantly sort of synth focused there, where the vocals kind of resonated amongst everything else. The motif overall was very warm and kind and caring and loving, like the sun was like shining over you. I liked the fact that some of the lead layers kind of went from one side of the headphone to the other, as if it was rotating around you, or as if it was celebrating the rotation of the earth leading to the new day from sunrise to sunset. And you felt as if you're a person actually staring at the sun at the end of the day, getting spoken to by this person, and just the thoughts resonating around your head. It was a very sort of, again, a unique experience. And I think overall that motif, the theme there, making you feel nice and warm, like you've been in a cozy blanket, with the vocals, what they're talking about, experiencing the light, staring at the sun, but not like in a weird way. It's like, are you in the glow of it? With the storytelling, what it is, just everything made a lot of sense together. thematically and stylistically and all together, it's just really well done. It didn't feel like the 4 minutes, there was no filler in it. It didn't feel as if it was overcompensating for anything. It seemed well staged, and it was like a bell curve. You had like a gentle entrance there with things kind of peaking in the midpoint, and then that fade out at the end, very classy, and no complaints, not a note out of place. Finally, the studio recording, mixing and mastering, it was cool. I enjoyed my time with it. I think that the vocals had a great presence in the mix, despite the complexity of the production in regards to the delay and effects change on those. While I didn't get all the words clearly necessarily, I didn't think that was necessarily a detriment because of how well it harmonized and resonated with everything else. The synth layers, along with like the kind of bass, which was nice and round in the root notes, but never kind of was like it wasn't a doofy bass. It was more a rounded kind of like fill in the low end kind of thing, like a fill in the low end resonancy kind of take on that. Or the filtering of the arpeggiators on top kind of dancing above, again with like careful attention to panning of like the synths across the stereo field, but otherwise having things nice and wide so that you were surrounded by the music. The drums coming in and doing some side chaining to other bass and synth elements there, coming in when they needed to, but not being a focal point for much of the track. So I think the percussion came around the halfway point anyways for the most part. There was a little bit at first, and then it was a bit more active, and it kind of pulled off as well, as if to say, no, we've had our heavy bit now, we're going to relax again, which was cool. And, with the synths and the leads and the other bits of articulation, the higher end balancing out the frequency spectrum, there were no red resonant frequencies, so things were about well balanced there. And it was also nicely leveled. There weren't any weird kind of peaks or troughs anywhere, These are pretty easy to follow along to with a decent, respectable amount of dynamic range there. And I think that, with that in mind, it was also nice and loud without pumping, so the limiting compression was sorted. And basically, this is my review of Avdrav's first Sunset. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go check out the various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time as they need the help. More than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.